Hello, my name is Brant Hunt, and today is the last day of January, that is the 31st, on 2023, that is the year of our Lord. And I'm going to be sharing some information with you today. First, I want to tell you that my channel is Discerning What is True, which is on YouTube and Honesty. And I'm also on Facebook with my name being Brant, B-R-A-N-T, Hunt, H-U-N-T. I'm happy that you're here. I hope that we can educate one another and also be able to open up your eyes and ears, you see, and to see what is true. So that's what we're looking for as truth here. So the talk is on what I call an author who has passed away. I think it was last year, Niki Raapana, who once lived in Seattle, Washington, and began to discover how this communitarianism is being used and being spread. And so she is um, what I would call a true revolutionary in a way, that meaning that taking the prongs off of the goodness of what they were told they were good. In reality, it was to destroy and take people out of their homes. So here we go with her book. This book was written back in 2012 with the help of her daughter. So as we go down here, let's get to the first page. Yeah. First of all, 2020, our common destiny. This was their perspective. It was hoping to get to this area, that is to get to this time frame. It's now 2023, and people are working on this plan, and people are getting paid for this too, folks. So here's the outline of the particular book. 2020, communitarianism. Number 2, community policing. 3, ABCD, assets-based community development. 4, compass, community mapping and planning analysis. 5, origins of smart growth. 6, local agenda 21. 7, vision 2020, not only there, but also in Anchorage 2020. Ecology and historical debts. And then what we call getting to the part of our book 2 is to deal with the Anti-Communitarian Manifesto, which is the Hegelian dialectic and the historical evolution of communitarian thinking. First of all, here's the preface. First and foremost, our readers are amazing, and this is for you. We could never have followed through with our third print publication in 7 years without your amazing support and encouragement. And I'm going to do something here real quick so it can make it easier for me to read. Sorry about that. This book represented 13 years of collaboration efforts between myself and my mother, Niki Raapana. It's been a monumental task. I've been working my entire adult life learning the ins and outs of publishing and trying to detail our research to something manageable. I was in high school when we wrote this two most well-known papers, what is the Hegelian dialectic and the historical evolution of communitarian thinking, which we combined to form the Definite and Anti-Communitarian Manifesto. In 2005, we wrote the first draft of 2020, Our Common Destiny. It was outlined by myself and written as a biographical narrative from my mother's point of view. We called it the true story of how 2 American women follow a paper trail from the lowly Seattle neighborhood to the elite boardrooms of the United Nations. Our story has gone from around the world, and our original academic critique of the final synthesis is in the Hegelian dialectic stands undisputed. We have successfully identified communitarianism as the legal and spiritual foundation for worldwide sustainable development. Not only were we right, it is extraordinary how the concepts we identified 13 years ago have emerged from obscurity through years of propaganda and paradigm shifts. The sustainability lifestyle, Mimi, has infected mainstream conscious life like a mind virus and shown its true colors as the most brutal, powerful, quasi-religious economic doctrine the world has ever seen. When we first wrote about the Hegelian dialectic, it was such a obscure topic. I never expected it would become fashionable. But Elliott Magazine, ELLE Magazine, just printed an article in this letter section about a Hegelian dialectic comparing social media buzz on actress Katherine Heigl. That is Heigia. Sorry, Heigl. Superficial, an obvious inside joke on the cult of celebrity, but it's clear to me what is the Hegelian dialectic. It's even more relevant now than it was 10 years ago when we confusing hard, irrelevant, non-real conspiracy theory, etc. It is preposterous. Our thesis is that communitarian law is the judicial system and spiritual foundation for worldwide sustainable development. How can we omit the entire focus of our research from our research? That is, what should we be? What would we be if we did? It has been said more than once that our research is sound, information is good, but we are obviously what we call Alaskan hillbillies. There are people who think that if we really cared about exposing the truth, we would step down and hand our publishing company over to a more able team, but that will never happen. We and we alone develop our own original thesis, pushing an entirely new school of thought to the international political and academic arena. We've had steady book sales of 2020, Our Common Destiny, and the Anti-Communitarian Manifesto for 6 years without any advertisement, thanks to our readers, friends, and fans worldwide. Cheers. I was born in Alaska, grew up boondocking the backcountry between Fairbanks, Anchorage, Valdez, Killington, Canada, and most of the western United States. We live on some of the most desolate roads in the biggest mountains ranges in North America. In the winter, we live, work, and play in the deepest snow. I was raised to function in the coldest temperatures, and part of that means keeping a rig running even if it's 60 below in Fahrenheit, that is. Alaskans, in general, are a very auto-dependent people. We don't just buy vehicles, we establish fleets, big and little trucks, hot rods, community cars, family cars, motorcycles, dirt bikes, snow machines, three-wheelers, four-wheelers, campers, airplanes, boats, and trailers. We like to be able to haul everything we need, including people, gear, toys, tools, guns, ammo, and coolers full of food, beer, meat, and fish. We're rough people who love to shoot, drink, rally, and have fun, and it's all about what's under the hood. Summer before the 7th grade, we moved to Seattle and rented a big house 5 minutes from the University of Washington. We lived in the shadow of Roosevelt High School, a busy urban center on about 25 major bus lines. Seattle Metro is no joke. It is one of the finest public transportation systems in America. For 8 years, I was able to safely walk, skateboard, bus bike, and ferry all over Seattle and Tacoma, massive urban sprawl. Study everything from municipal codes, meeting notes, and cross-training manuals to comprehensive plans and international law. We put in hundreds of unpaid hours, journalists making copies of our research for anyone who asked to see it. The massive amount of documents we were able to attain using public disclosure laws helped more than one team of well-paid lawyers along the way. We never got paid and actually got sued in the end, but we did learn a lot. It turned out that the abatement inspections the city has planned for Roosevelt served multiple purposes. On top of stealing land, we were a pilot test for assessed-based community development. Employees in different departments who had access to private homes were being cross-trained and instructed on the methodology of assess interviews. By performing routine duties, field workers would obtain information on lifestyles, habits, skills, interests, and assets of the entire household. Map the location of bedrooms and common areas, and enter personal identification data into the community development software. The Seattle police would utilize the SARA model to gather data and test innovative militarized enforcement strategies on certain demographics in certain Seattle neighborhoods. None of that really mattered to Sisley. He was not at all concerned for his tenants' privacy, safety, or even basic human dignity. He could care less that the inspections would give developers ammunition to punish him for revised code violations. He wanted us to find proof that the city was attempting to seize his properties for redevelopment. We got him that and a lot more. We found evidence that the city planned and executed, with the help of the Seattle Times and The Stranger, a successful smear campaign against Sisley, Sisley, in the press, calling him a slumlord. They always have to point out, people, this is what people do. They do this every time. They always put someone down, you see, as though they're going to be the saviors, you see. Get it? And claiming his tenants were people to be feared, and that we were a threat to local businesses and quality of life. This is how they stigmatize you. Once we saw the depth of this insanity, we were compelled to keep going, if only to find out where we stood in the grand scheme of things. What was really going on? When we learned that our block was a pilot test for highly technical militarized policing strategies, and our assets were about to be developed by unknown persons, we were unprepared for the shock. It opened up so much. We were swept away by the amount of documents we had. An hour into detention, this is what happened. An hour into the detention, two male policemen, officers, took a young woman, one of our friends, hostage in a filthy, broken basement bathroom. They forced her to sit on the dirty floor, stood over her, and questioned her about things they had found in her bedroom. They asked her about a letter she had written. See, folks, hold on a second. Let me just make it clear. You don't have any business in anybody's house. You see, that violates natural law. Have they done anything to anybody? No. See, this is what's going on here. And the police and others are pushing this stuff, when in reality, they don't have any rights to even come in your house. You have a warrant? You see, this is what's going on. Most of these policemen are former soldiers. They're former military people. And they have no idea what they're doing, except they're causing harm to other people, you see. Anyway, they forced her to sit on the dirty floor. They asked her about a letter she had written to her mom, but not sent. Now, see, this is none of your business. Having never been arrested in her life, she was understandably shaken by the experience and didn't want to get roughed up or taken to jail. She and everyone else cooperated fully, allowing themselves to be intimidated, threatened, and dehumanized. When we questioned public officials regarding the raid, we were told we shouldn't worry, that it wasn't our problem since it had not happened to us. We were asked, don't you want to live in a nice community? I told repeatedly that the community needed this, that it was a livable issue since we had such a low quality of life in Roosevelt. In other words, they were stigmatizing these people, you see. This rhetoric used to justify planning actions and pilot tests is what ultimately led up to communitarianism. We felt that our neighborhood was already livable. It wasn't perfect, but it was comparable, safe, and had a lot of character. We appreciate the mix of old and new buildings and the people living and working in the area. We represent a broad spectrum of nationalities, lifestyles, and social economic backgrounds. Other people saw Roosevelt and the connected university area as a deeply troubled area. Crime, noise, shabby bars, junk cars, and people with tattoos, piercing, strange hair, dirty clothes, motorcycles, skateboards, etc., that were destroying the livability of the community. Not to mention all of the huge cities, loaded rooming and boarding houses, old, decrepit structures brimming with transit, trash, immigrants, indigenous, gypsies, and drug addicts, college students, and other environment that reduce quality of life. Roosevelt was designated as a high priority problem area and a pilot test. The Roosevelt Neighborhood Plan follows suggestions laid out by Local Agenda 21, transform our neighborhood. Seemingly overnight, we lost status as legal residents. Economically viable consumers and individuals with protections under law, we were unfairly classified as gang-affiliated slum dwellers, unfit to manage our properties and personal lives, concerned, demolished. It's a communitarian green space now, ripe for development into sustainable housing and employment centers of the future. 13 years ago, we started trying to explain to our people what worldwide sustainable development means at the local level. Since this, countless communities have undergone the same transformation change we experienced in Roosevelt. Countless parasitical private-public organizations, you heard that, PPO, private-public partnerships also, folks, the PPP, they're parasites, you see. And industries have been invented and overlaid on top of legitimate business of suffocating America's already choked out agriculture and manufacturing. Our basic needs cannot be met by our own local economies, you see, which has been successfully annihilated by sustainable economic development. See, they've destroyed what was there. That's what they're doing right now before your eyes, folks. Stricter zoning, international building codes. Why would the international building codes be a part of this country, folks? And regulations take out the pioneer entrepreneur spirit wherever it dares to raise its head. The institutions offering the solution to our economic woes, claiming to work for peace, provide food and health services to the poor, are the same people who invented money, the need for money, and the oppressive global caste system in the first place. The bitter truth is science, anthropology, eugenics, and naturalism were developed by racist megalomaniacs to justify the study, subjecting or slaughtering every tribe on this planet. Communitarianism is the final synthesis of all opposing those theories into one all-encompassing political platform. It is a oppressive, genocidal code of law masquerading as a warm, fuzzy mishmash of social theory. It's true world religion, the perfect solution to the imbalance between natural science, social science, and theology. The illusionist spell of sustainability is an economic masterwork. It employs psychology, mysticism, science, language, and humanities against us to redirect our talent and limit our potential as material and spiritual beings. Current natural statistics regarding our depressed economic state and the explosion of homeless and hunger are results of the communitarian vision of America that is to constantly conflict with its own success. I love my country. I love our rise and grind people, but we are being robbed and we are letting it happen. We have been reduced to assets and tradable commodities for people who are already unfathomably rich. To the bewilderment of many hardworking, honest Americans, the billionaires' effect of technology and endless domestic and foreign world wars, many have been led to believe that subjection of all Earth people's sustainable development is the only hope for the future. We have been bought, sold, and solidly scammed. But perhaps the most crushing defeat of all would be the loss of our best minds to university education. The commodification and institutionalization of knowledge makes tools out of bright, idealistic kids. We import communitarian dystopia via environmental laws and international studies in our universities. It is exported violently through the American military and peacefully via a civil service organization called like Rotary, the Rotary Call. In this book, you will find no regurgitations of standard party lines. We simply identify a problem and offer it to you for thorough consideration. It is our hope that this information can empower you to make informed choices for yourself and your family. It bothers us to see people as deceived by engineered conflicts, unable to break out of the dialectic and stop the cycle of being used by the same people for thousands of years. This summer in June 2012, these same people will gather in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, at the Rio Plus 20 Earth Summit Conference to celebrate 20 years of the work, commitment to sustainability, and the transformation of everyone into global citizens. They will toast their absolute dominion over all human activity. And it is sickening. Hell or high water, we are determined to illustrate the depth and complexity of the system until we help people understand the amount of money being generated from our labors, the players who profit, and the psychological controls used against us. We will continue to be subjective. But the people of Earth are beautiful, brave, strong, and creative. We are finally awakening to the nasty truth of the machine we have been born into, and we're ready to tear it apart, sprocket by sprocket. Yours in poetry, Nordita Friedrich, 2012. Introduction, what plan? The year is 2012. The work is intended, so this is 11 years ago, folks. The world has entered the long-awaited era of free trade, open borders, ethical business practices, and peace and justice. Our leaders have convinced us that our planet is suffering from eons of irresponsible human use. Yeah, they see us as worms, cockroaches. The result of this is their attitude. The result of celebrating unfettered individual freedom is inequality, social injustice, war, disease, famine, global warming, and the inhumane treatment of animals. This year, they will gather at Rio, Brazil, for the 20th anniversary of the Earth Summit to celebrate 20 years of implementing United Nations Local Agenda 21 program for sustainable development around the globe. Issues that cross all borders, all like global food security, like climate change, like degradation of the environment. Economic crisis and political unrest set the stages for world leaders to lay out their global management systems or solutions. After years of careful preparation and agreements between elite powers, it is agreed that every individual on this planet must be subordinated to the global community. The common good will forever replace the outdated and destructive notion of individual rights. The blueprint for central government authority was handed out to the United Nations in 1992. It established the bureaucratic structures for the global economic and political systems. Revised local Agenda 21 plans are underway worldwide, directing all people, land, business, commerce, industry, agriculture, and education. The goal is to create a more sustainable world culture. You see, it's interesting when they use this word sustainable world cultural. What it means simply is that it's no longer the individual is important, folks. It's all about world culture, world government, world control. At first, these plans for sustainable communities seem practical, benign, honorable, and fair. They are described as community visions which naturally arise out of local interests. They promise to protect the future needs of the community from selfish, materialistic consumers abusing the planet today. But they are not practical. They're not benign. They are not fair. Chapter 1. If you're looking for a label for the new administration in Washington, something other than liberal or moderate, try communitarianism. Ever heard of communitarianism? Communitarian law? Communitarian anything? If you're one of the millions of people who have it, the first thing you might like to know is that none of us common folks were ever supposed to know about something of this nature. Here's a quote. There are some tendencies within the European Union that can be seen with critical eyes, he said, notably a extension of community law by the European Court. This is from Austria, New Thoughts on the EU by James Cantor, Kanter, of the International Herald Tribune. How many people see the extension of the EU, communitarian laws, with critical eyes? Unlike French, Dutch, and Irish voters, Americans and British voters were never asked to vote on integration under communitarianism. No, we have never been asked. Because they know that it's going to be hard to pass when people really realize what's going on. It's done by, keep you in the dark. Isn't this a beautiful world? We can make it better. Communitarians use different tactics in different parts of the world. This means national resistance to them takes many different forms. In Muslim countries, there has always been a tolerance of Zionist-Catholic imperialist ideology. For a brief time, a movement of Europeans challenged the supremacy of community law. In the States, there is no thing of that nature. It was developed in the 1980s and 90s in explicit opposition to the theoretical liberalism of thinkers such as John Rawls, R-A-W-L-S. According to communitarians, liberalism relies on a conception of the individual that is unrealistically automatized and abstract. It also places too much importance on the individual values such as freedom and autonomy. Its chief representatives include Amir, I don't know how to pronounce it, so please forgive me, A-M-I-T-A-I, Amital, and this is the big spokesman, E-T-Z-I, Zion, and Michael Sandel and Charles Taylor. This is from a quote from See Also Collectivism. This is Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. I'm a common-born American. I hold no titles of nobility or upper academia, but I did go to college for 3.5 years and was not taught any of this. I learned it on my own by seeking definitions for terms used by the city of Seattle to write new regulations. Not one single public official I correspond with explained anything to me about community law. They simply went on about things like livability and quality of life, and assured me I wouldn't be able to understand their lofty new purpose. They were right. I didn't. Nobody did. This is a quote from Bill Clinton. America is culturally a different country. Well, yeah, and no, it isn't until you changed it all. And before then, we are more diverse. We are more communitarian. That is, we understand we have to solve a lot of these problems together. That's a quote from Bill Clinton. American people are still in the dark about communitarianism, even though occasionally our leaders openly discussed it with the mainstream press from a 2009 article at UPI News called Bill Clinton Urges Communitarianism. Former U.S. President Bill Clinton put out a clarion call for people to engage in communitarianism, doing one's part for those on the disadvantaged side of the inequality that exists around the what we would call this whole works is going on. Clinton is not just calling on Americans. The theory of community rights, private citizen, and big mother collective rights of the global community in the new communitarian global paradigm, individual rights are replaced with the rights of the community, which are only vaguely defined. Laws protecting individuals from government interference are outmoded and must be balanced by experts against the sensibilities of a global market. Trade agreements, tariffs, constitutions, and religious freedoms are all identified as barriers to achieving worldwide sustainable growth. International environmental law. Communitarian law has been introduced slowly and implemented in stages using a process known as gradualism. Wherever the law forbids arbitrary changes, the nuts and bolts must be obscure from public view. Changes are made at the community level and never through the proper legal channels, you see. They do it on their own, you see. They see themselves as far better than you are, but yet they're the ones that have destroyed your life since you were born here. Get it? And there are people who work for money to do this to others. So here are a few different ways to say communitarian law. One is community law. One is called community equis. Divided sovereignty. Sistema de justicia comunitaria. Equis communitarian. Code de reactio institutional. Anyway, it's are different languages of what they call it. Use of these terms is generally limited to upper academia, in national study programs, and governments that are integrating national law with European-style trade unions. Whatever you want to call it, communitarian law is introduced in the United States through a number of channels, including administrative agency regulations. This would be what we call, try to think of the name of the thing here right second here. These would be what you call people who are actually not what they call NGOs, non-government officials. So they have been given the power and been going circles around everything else that we call real law. Powerful federal agencies like the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, implemented communitarian resolutions everywhere, expanding their authority a little bit more every year. The EPA has led the Balancing Act worldwide, toasted themselves at the Earth Summit, Trilateral Commission, and the Bilderberg meetings, the Council of Foreign Relations, the Carnegie Foundation for World Peace and Justice, Democratic Leadership Councils, New World Order projects, and projects for the New American Century. The communitarians come from all over the planet, from every belief system in the political spectrum. That is left, right, radical, middle, Jew, Muslim, Catholic, Protestant, Buddhist, pagan, atheist. All extremes are represented, and so is everyone in the middle or on the fringe. The most influential living communitarian thinking and guru in the world is Amita Etzioni. I'll spell it again to you, Amitai Etzioni. He was born Werner Falk and changed his name to a Hebrew name that means tree of life or knowledge from Zion. What an ego, folks. What an ego. Tell me about it. In 15 years of American education, I've never been exposed to this particular guy, the ideology of balancing, and I have never heard of him. His books were on the desks of several Seattle politicians and agencies heads, which I suddenly began noticing after I found his name and works. The communitarian solution to all our woes is to balance selfishness, individualism, and dangerous, outdated ideas of nationalism against the enlightened idea of the global collective good. That's what he teaches, you see. Being a newcomer to the vast new science of social economics, which was invented by Etzioni and Mikhail Gorbachev, I beg my local, that's why Gorbachev was so key, folks. I begged my local officer to explain their expanding authority law they represented using vague terminology coined by him at the Zion. Finally, in total exasperation, I started using the internet to research. I made uh, my daughter teach me how to use the web, and what a treasure trove of libraries and morgues I found. Under liberalism, of course, as we widely know, the last 25 years has witnessed renewed interest in collectivists. Anytime they use the word collectivist, folks, is a socialist agenda, period. Analysis of liberal society. Through the term collectivist is abjured in favor of the communitarian. Writing in 1985, Amy Gutmann, Gutmann, observed that we are witnessing a revival of communitarian criticism of liberal political thought. This is at the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Once I understood the language and what they believed in, it was clear. Many low-level bureaucrats are happily unaware of the role they play. People working in programs committed to rebuilding smarter, greener, healthier cities rarely take a close look at their actual jobs. Some might, but inevitably find themselves in a disheartened labyrinth of books, articles, opinions, and propaganda. What purpose does a degree in what purpose does a degree in community development serve? How many Americans have degrees in sustainable development? Today, there are the fields that have all the grant fund offices on campuses and the biggest budgets. Students are flocking to these fields because they appear lucrative and even helpful. Once they learn the truth, they face a terrible choice. To me, this explains why the curriculum is taught only as a theory that has no effect on real life. We are all being retrained to become good global citizens, and once we learn the truth about our roles, we can never unlearn what we know. The responsive communitarian platform explains the logic for rebuilding the world into a cooperative communities. There are 3 levels of communitarian law. At the top, we have identified countless international bodies, courts, appointed councils, committees, partnerships, trusts, financiers, bankers, politicians, leadership groups, think tanks, trade agreements, resolutions, and treaties. Examples are the G8, the G20, the United Nations, the United Nations Temple of Justice, International Court at The Hague. This has been going on for over 100 years, folks, and especially The Hague. That was actually started in the 1800s, late 1800s. World Bank, Bank of International Settlements, International IMF, Club of Rome, International Criminal Court of Rome, U.S. Agency for International Development, the Green Cross International, the Trilateral Council, Council on Foreign Relations, Carnegie Endowment for International Peace and Justice, Habitat for Humanity. You know that one, the one that Jimmy Carter is so enthused about. The Eco Trust, Earth First, and other big NGOs, non-government organizations or non-government officials. In the middle, regional trade unions, regional courts, permanent councils, advisory boards, tribal councils, corporations, scientists, experts, theologians, priests, lawyers, facilitators, change agents, teachers, and student volunteers. Trade law represents the interests of the corporate investor and environmental community insiders in every former nation. Trade law balances all national law that conflicts with global sustainable development. The middle level fixes this if it becomes an issue. See, we wouldn't be in this trouble if we stayed with what we call natural law. This has all been gradually going on for thousands of years, folks. Okay. At the bottom level existed parallel to legitimate local government, whose new purpose is mainly to pass local plans and establish the global agenda. Local governments incorporate sustainable development objectives into educational centers and normal government business. These players are all rank and file communitarians assigned to assist each area with creating the bureaucratic structure for new community agencies and enforcement personnel. Many promotions come from the rank and file. The correct application of communitarian law produced by an international immigration organization implies the state's members have to make political, regulative, organizational, and legal issues and norms that regulate economic issues inside of the European Union. Nature of European Union law as a system of legal norms is contradictory by itself in theory, and characteristics are related to direct application, supremacy, and preeminence. This is from Idea, Nature, and Characteristics of Community Law by Maja Sarhadzit. It's just Sahadzzic. You notice that these people who have these weird names are involved too. So they're from the East or from somewhere. They don't have English names, folks. Very few of them. Anyway, that's just my point. How many people know there are 4 units in the legal system that combine into 4 sources consisting of 2 groups of norms in the communitarian legal system? I don't know that. Tempting the language that sounds so banal, it hurts, and inventing obscure terms to cloak the true meaning. It's essential to create an elite science that can be passed off as a harmless theory. Few Americans will ever be taught original communitarian law, derivative communitarian law, or complementary communitarian law, even in higher education. Most schools introduce their students to international law and leave it to that. Terms like sustainable development, trade corridors, trade agreements, climate change, community development, neighborhood plans, habitats, conservative easements, Singlet byways, and smart group are more common now than they were 10 years ago, but the actual terms for the new judicial order is still hidden from Americans. We're taught new trendy words. Nobody knows where it started or who said it first, but soon everyone starts using it, you see. It's just everyone's speaking communitarian, and suddenly it's the new cool thing because they have, it's part of the program. If you read the books that Dr. John Coleman wrote about the Tavistock Institute. It's just part of it. This is just a gradual morph down to us now, because now you're seen as the enemy. Over the last 50 years, the U.S. economy has been regionalized and harmonized under sustainable development principles laid out by the United Nations and traders in every nation in this world. Today, sustainable development is such a powerful force that any business that wants to succeed in present and future markets, especially one guaranteed bailouts by taxpayers' donations, will use sustainable to describe their business practice. It's the hottest emerging market since the .coms, you see. A workshop that is analyzed the definition of the term communitarianism, which was in essence understood to be community empowerment. Communitarianism seeks to confront and resolve problems by community discord and action. It recognizes that the community is the essential stakeholder and must be the ultimately responsible for its own development process. The communitarian approach requires sound leadership, a community development mission, and action programs, dedicated resources, and institutional connectedness with the people. Local government, communitarianism, and the citizen, opportunities and challenges that are taking place. This is from Kingston, Jamaica. Community and economic development is a standard goal for American government agencies, but hardly anyone knows what kind of communities are being developed. And lately, more people I know personally are confusing individual rights with human rights. Correct. Human rights is the endowment from the quote-unquote United Nations. Folks, that's one of the stepping stones. If you don't have individual rights, folks, you already are a slave in many ways. So she's going to explain it here. Individual rights versus human rights. In the late 18th century, the desire for individual rights and liberty for common people swept across the world. Desire for special rights for an anointed elite had existed since the beginning of time. International documents like the Earth Charter are founded on human rights, not individual rights, as they are explicitly defined in the United States and 50 state constitutions. The idea that common people must be governed by elites is always the same, but morphs every 100 years or so. The latest version of it is taking place right before our eyes. The concept of everyone having a right to free trade, safety, housing, a decent job, happy children, and health care sounds honorable, or the surface, especially to poor, landless serfs. But the insidious means communitarian use to achieve their goals violate any recognized standard for decency and justice. Free people don't have to take a job or apartment they don't want and will not be made to take medicine or food from a business they don't trust. Some systems were actually established to protect citizens from being forced into doing anything by the community, especially things related to their health. As Englishmen and women, the American colonies were heirs to the 13th century English document, the Magna Carta, which established the principles that no one is above the law, not even the king, and that no one can take away certain rights. Human rights succeed individual rights, you see, and can be taken away by the collective. Get it? You see the collective word there? That is a Soviet word they use. That is a communist word. It's all based upon a collective. If individuals don't act like they should, you see, acting out bad behaviors leaves troublemakers with no rights at all. See how they do this? Just gradually do this. This is amazing. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in spirit of brotherhood. Man, that's a nice statement, isn't it? Universal Universal Declaration of Human Rights based in 1948. And I can almost bet you that was a UN declaration. But again, you see, human rights instead of individual rights. Our Constitution is based on the self-evident truth that all men are born with unalienable, God-given individual rights. Human rights don't come from the Creator or mankind, but from a global government of experts. These wise, enlightened beings added their clause that humans should act in a certain prescribed way in order to keep their rights. Their word should has no place in any legal document claiming to protect the rights of men to listen to their own conscience and be the motivation of their own life. You see. In a communitarian world, even monarchs and other heads of states are lowly subject before the community court. The UN rule of law activities supporting the development, promotions, and implementation of international norms and standards in most fields of international law. The United Nations works to support a rule of law framework on the national level. A constitution or its equivalent at the highest law of land, clear and consistent legal framework, and implementation thereof, strong institution of justice, government, security, and human rights. They are well structured, financed, trained, and equipped. Transitional justice processes and mechanism, and a public and civil society that contributes to strengthening the rule of law and holding public officials and institutions accountable. These are the norms, policies, institutions, and processes that form the core of a society in which individuals feel safe and secure, where disputes are settled peacefully and effectively redress is available for harm suffered, and where all who violate the law introduced in the state, including the state itself, are held to account. Again, this is from the United Nations and the rule of law. This is from a CAS group. She gives the website here from website casgrup.fiu.edu. So that's probably Florida International University. Interesting name, isn't it? Florida International University. Why is it an international university, you see? The first supranational judicial plot, I'm sorry, I read the wrong thing here. Regional community law regulates trade and commerce between member nations, owners, and workers. Trade organizations such as the WTO and the Organization of American States acts as internal courts while the larger court system is being established. In 2003, Italian Prime Minister Giuliano Amato, later Vice President of the European Union Constitutional Convention, told the Italian newspaper La Stampa how communitarian law is introduced. One must act as if in Europe, as if one wanted only very few things in order to attain a great deal. As if nations were to remain sovereign in order to convince them to surrender their sovereignty. The Commission in Brussels, for example, must act as if it were a technical organization in order to operate like a government. And so camouflaging and toning down. The sovereignty lost at national level does not pass to any new subject. It is entrusted to the faceless entity, NATO, the UN, and eventually the EU. The Union is the vanguard of this changing world. It indicates a future of princes without sovereignty. The new entity is faceless, and those who are in command can neither be pinned down or elected. That is the way Europe was made to, by creating communitarian organizations without giving the organisms preside over by national governments the impression that they were being subjected to a higher power. That is how the Court of Justice, a supernatural organ, was born. It was sort of an unseen atom bomb, which Schulman and Monet slipped into the negotiations on coal and steel communities. The primary rule that the national courts of member states are obliged to apply directly those communitarian standards which fulfill the communitarian conditions of the immediate applicability. Community laws require every nation to completely change their existing political structures. All prior legal contracts are balanced away. Any individual liberties claimed by dissenting citizens are seen as a threat to national security. In South America, where nations have voted for socialism and majorities are happy enough to keep voting for it, like Australia, national constitutions are being openly rewritten and subserviently international communitarian legal contracts. The socialists aren't liking this either. Bolivia reality is a prime example, but the transformation of society isn't limited to nations based in Marxist principles, though. Across Europe and the US, there are many new communitarian crimes with sentences that make all free-thinking people cringe. Historical scholars, journalists, intellectuals, teachers, professors, and comedians have been punished for saying things that contradict the official history of World War II. Remember those stories? You know, the ones that they claimed that there was a Jewish Holocaust, when in reality it was a German Holocaust. And they've subjected Germany to paying back whatever these people who claim that they were victims. That's that whole victim mentality too, folks. It's a snake in the grass. Attempting to expose revisionist history can be a dangerous enterprise, no doubt about that. Most people would rather repeat lies than go to jail for speaking the truth. That's what the globalists call morality, you see. I'm trying to think of his name, the British historian who got in big time trouble in Canada. Irving, you remember him? Kind of crossed the lines, folks. He began to see things that were not true. Didn't add up. Where are these 6 million? More laws against free speech are added daily across the world. Hate crime laws in the U.S. and every advanced communitarian region. Why is that called hate crime? Well, the key is simply is if you say something hateful, then you're the problem. When in reality, simply you've been harmed by somebody else, and your response is what I would call hatred. You see, so now you're going to be what they call like little robots. You see, you can no longer spout out whatever you feel, what's going on in your heart. Victim rights are just another way to muddy and eventually eliminate individual rights. You see. Once the concept of individual rights is successfully wiped off the face of this planet, people will see how wonderful Mother Earth is and how sacred and divine her protectors. There will be no more written constitutions, and laws will remain in constant flux, much dependent on the enforcer. That word would be enforcer, probably would be someone like a dictator. All nations will comply with a global system of law, which changes so quickly and is so supremely used to define official public policies and offices that represent communitarian leadership. The Italian Council on the European Movement, the CIME, together with the AEDE, the CIFE, the AICCRE, the FICE, promotes a multimedia program of information debate on the European Union, aiming at encouraging youth participation to the next elections of the European Parliament in order to reduce abstention and increase awareness of young voters with regard to the functioning and policies challenging faced by the process of European integration. The initiative is supported by the European Commission, Youth in Action Program, with the contribution of the European Parliament, information offices for Italy, the Department for Communitarian Policies of the Italian Prime Minister's Office, and of the Italian Ministry of the Instruction Unit at Research. This is from harvard.ed. In local communitarian rule of law, bottom level local communitarian rule of law, bottom level bureaucrats do all the dirty work and keep the books. They study, catalog, and confiscate local assets and assert control over land and resources for the community. By sidestepping national, congressional, and constitutional laws, local adepts expand federal agencies' regulatory powers achieved under the Federal Administration Procedure Act of 1946. Communitarian law protects investors involved in new public-private partnership, there it is, the PPP, to control local natural resources and affects us as home in our neighborhood. The people who enforce friendly homeowner regulations and community citizen obligations don't live in New York, folks. They work for the World Trade Organization. They live next door and work for local community partnership. While many EU laws have slipped into land use plans, they are also written and enforced by other agencies for other purposes. For example, parks and recreation jurisdiction now goes way in a way of communitarianism. Building a global communitarian society. Communitarian values promote sustainability, livability, quality of life by regulating the smallest details of life. In Bhutan, they just, that is in 2011, outlawed the sale of cigarettes. The government has assumed an expanded power to search homes and businesses of people who may harbor smokers with trained dogs. They're going to be the first nation in the world to eradicate smoking. The rest of us will certainly be following their lead. 1 year ago, the state of North Carolina began enforcing a statewide public smoking ban. With this, it created new classes of shunned criminals and desired trend. Experts routinely recommend new enforcement policies that supposedly arose from the desire of the public. But people are waking up to the fact that the source blueprint for meeting the challenges of global sustainable development was adopted by the UN in 1992. Agenda 21-2.1, in order to meet the challenges of environmental and development, states have decided to establish a new global partnership. This partnership commits all states to engage in continuous and constructive dialogue, inspired by the need to achieve a more efficient and equitable world economy, keeping in view the increasing interdependence of the community of nations, and that sustainable development should become a priority item on the agenda of the international community. It is recognized that for the success of the new partnership, it is important to overcome confrontation and to foster a climate of genuine cooperation. Obviously, all these new communitarian policies, programs, and regulations cost money to implement. With the global recession, you would think any money spent would be spent wisely, but even the brokest nations can find a way to pay for greener ways of adopting communitarian global norms. For example, Hungary, Poland, and 3 other nations take over citizens' pension money to make up government budget shortfalls. I'll say that again. Hungary, Poland, and 3 other nations take over citizens' pension money to make up the government budget shortfalls. That's based upon Europol, EUROPA.EU. Under the United States Constitution, on all 50 states' constitution, the legitimate American government derives its just powers from the consent of the government. This means that people possess individual rights from the moment they are born and confer certain rights or powers to their governing body while retaining all their natural born rights as human beings. Under U.S. laws, we can give anyone else. Under U.S. law, we can't give anyone else's freedom away. It's not ours to give. Communitarian rights balance our system of justice and eliminate tricky legal barriers to building a dictatorship of the community. Rights are conferred by the governing body down to the people they control. Those that give it may also take it away. Here's a quote from the direct effect of community law. Community law not only imposes obligations on the individuals, but also confers on them rights which they can invoke before national and community courts. So what this is saying simply is that your individual rights are no longer, they're toast. They're actually, you see, this is how this works. See, people have been brainwashed. So what's happening is that the community can say they don't like something in your particular neighborhood. Like maybe you're having something in the backyard, or you have a wood stove or something of that nature. And what they'll do, they will violate your individual rights. You see. This is how they prey upon this thing here. This is why there's so much division now taking place in this country. But it's not just here, folks, it's everywhere. One of the new rights people gain under the communitarian system is the right to be developed properly by experts and outside interests. No longer does the empire strike fear into the hearts of the conquered. It lulls them into bored complicity with promises of a better world slick advertisement campaigns, and the bogus social sciences, doomsday theories, and religious psychobabble. One other thing that makes communitarians difficult to follow is they continuously change the name of their theories. Yes, they do. For example, it used to be called global warming. Now it's called climate change, being just one example. They also add new words to their lexicon every day. Over the next decade leading up to 2020, we will see some more very aggressive changes in the introduction to even more obscure, unpronounceable new terminology. This is from Secretary of State Hillary Clinton with the Quadrilateral Diplomacy and Development Review, QDDR. This is a part of this, another statement here. Quote, the United States faces a set of complex and varied and numerous foreign policy challenges. No one set up the tools insufficient for solving or managing them. Really? That's bullcrap. That's a lie right there. Our success is exercising effective global leadership. It depends upon a robust and effective State Department and a U.S. aid. That's a United States. That's a UN group, folks. That's what it's about. Working side by side with a strong military. This is why we go into other countries, folks. We do this. We're forcing other countries to already forcing this down their throat. These are small countries, but they're doing it. By using all the tools of American power, hear that, we can pave the way for shared peace. Well, American power has no business in Guiana or wherever it is in Brazil. That's none of our business, you see. But we've been doing that for 150 years, you see, by us going into other countries and throwing other people out when in reality it was all about oil, you know. We can pave the way for shared peace, progress, and prosperity. Those three P's. Peace, progress, and prosperity. When in reality, folks, it's going to be quite the opposite. Those who are in charge right now probably own 95% of the world assets, maybe more. So the rest of us, the 7 billion, whatever billion they say we're here, I don't know what it is, but we own maybe 4%, 5% of that. They want all of it. They want all of it. They're greedy. This comprehensive approach is the essence of smart power. This is from WTEC.com. The new communitarianism redesigns language, traditions, and even religion. Americans would justifully assume that any development supported by their tax dollars would adhere to U.S. rule of law. So would you citizens of other countries. They would all be wrong in that assumption. Apparently, the new morality is superior, that the guru interprets the phrase, no established state religion, to mean the limits only apply to the United States. What do you get when you have Israeli firsters advising the Pentagon whether it can establish state religions in Arab and Muslim countries? See how this is just forced down your throat. Continue. The First Amendment, this establishment clause, is not a foreign policy tool, but a peculiar American conception. Just because the American government, that is, Obama, that is, speaking about this, attempts at dialogues have failed, and drastic steps must be taken to prevent the U.S. losing its Middle Eastern dominance to Tehran. This is, again, part of this whole thing. Writing in the U.S. Army Military Review Journal, S-Zion, E-T-Z-I-O-N-I, this is 4 possible responses to Iran's nuclear program. Engagement, sanctions, military strikes, and deterrence. He concludes that the engagement has failed. Sanctions are not likely to work. Military strikes on Iran's suspected nuclear strikes are also unlikely to be effective either and might only delay the program. This is based upon these events. Secretary Robert Gates believes this would probably be the 1 to 3 years. And the deterrence works with rational actors, but it's a gamble to rely on it with non-rational actors. This, he hypothesizes, leaves strikes on Iranian infrastructures that is not necessarily related to its nuclear program. Let me continue. As the leading former Israeli military official of the United States, Dr. Amitai Es-Zion is in steps with leaders who plan to invade Iran. This is based upon June 2010. It's not a coincidence that Iran's leaders, defamed by the Western press, are so outrageous and outspoken opposed to Zionist agenda for the Middle East. That whole idea is for the greater Israel, remember? January 6, 2011, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had called for a credible military option against Iran to force Tehran to end its nuclear energy programs. On Tuesday, He stated that the military actions should be taken by the international community and headed by the United States. Of course, we're always the one who actually goes in there and does the dirty work. And then that's why we're hated. You have to ratchet up the pressure, and I don't think that this pressure will be sufficient to have this regime change course without a credible military option that it put before them by the international community led by the United States, he stated. How do we go? How do we then go on to make sense of the Lisbon agenda? That is, in relationship to citizenship, especially since the shift to jobs and growth under the Barroso Commission. In many ways, it appears as though the European Union is navigating towards what can best be described as a neoliberal communitarianism citizenship model. Neolibertarian communitarianism, arguably more accurate term for the third way, implies a fusion of neoliberalism with a communitarian element that attempts to countervail the most harmful effects of neoliberal restructuring, not by reinvigorating the Keynesian welfare state, but through attempts to activate the state in welfare protection and more employment in order to adapt to more flexible labor markets and flexible working conditions. This is from Bieling, B-I-E-L-I-N-G, 2003. It's from pages 65 and 67. Also significant to the Lisbon goal of creating more and better jobs in the EU, the neoliberal communitarian citizenship model is underlined by a particular view of unemployment, one that views unemployment as a moral problem of the individual who is unemployed. So it's going to be all blamed on the employer, the individual. You see, this is based upon Ryder, R-Y-N-E-R, in 2002. It looks like it's page 10. It continues and argues that it is the personal responsibility of individuals to make sure they qualify for employment, whatever the changes in the structure of the labor market. This is from Oberbeck, O-B-E-R-B-E-E-K, 2003. And this is a page, looks like page 27. This view contrasts with a more social democratic, that is Keynesian's ideas, view of unemployment as societal problems that can be managed through economic intervention. This is from 2003. See also Abbott, A-L-B-O, 1994. This is from the Lisbon Agenda and neoliberal communitarian citizenship. In 2005, French and Dutch voters rejected the EU Constitution via national referendum. In 2007, after the Irish voters had rejected the EU Constitution at the polls, the Irish were asked to vote on the Lisbon Treaty, which they did, and it passed in law. The good thing about not calling it the Lisbon Treaty, the Constitution, is that no one can ask for the referendum on it. This is Giuliani Amonto in a speech at the London School of Economics. That's a key area at London School of Economics. Dr. John Coleman speaks of this group. There are thousands of community-based legal programs designed to prevent violence, blight, ugly homes, crime, accidental death, domestic disputes, ignorance, alcoholism, drug addiction, obesity, mental illness, the whoring syndrome, junk storage. This is unbelievable. Noise, nose picking, smoking, and other ideas against that would be a damage to the neighborhood or the community. So we identify troublemakers, reduce potential for crime, and prevents homeland terrorism. Potential for crime, almost committing a crime, must not be confused with criminal offense, which in the U.S. requires proof of damages for a guilty conviction. Prevention crimes don't need proof of damage because there are no damages that can be proven to exist. You get that? The court is only to make the accusation that a potential for crime exists and the case is practically closed. A true communitarian prosecutor uses coulds, shoulds, and what ifs, and the sentences always include community service. Do you see what's going on here? Do you see? Someone may have a vendetta against you, and they can basically destroy you. You see that? In the communitarian legal system, due process is eliminated. All decisions are final. There are no appeals. Selfish individuals and nations must be taught their new role as global citizens. Do you see what is going on here? This is radical. Private property rights, that is the basis for U.S. constitutional law, and people who retain them stand accused and convicted in the world of communitarian opinion for causing inequality. You, what we call in political science the haves and the have-nots, what's going on here is the have-nots now have more rights than the haves. This is what's going on. We talked about this many years ago when I was in college. We called it haves and have-nots. They had already sprinkled and quote unquote spread their seeds already at that point, folks, within us in the late 70s and early 80s. You see that? So you as a have are the bad person because you have stuff. You're selfish. But in reality, you're selfish because you want to have something, you see. You want to have something in quality of life. American taxpayers should also begin paying their debt to the global society now. Well, excuse me. We didn't make the, this is what, see what's going on here? The United States has introduced major new initiatives, that is the Global Health Initiative, GHI, and Feed the Future, FTF. Due to GHI, the United States will invest $63 billion to help countries build and strengthen their health system and achieve significant improvements in health outcomes, with a particular focus on women, newborns, and children. Wow. Through the FTF, the Feed the Future, we will invest $3.5 billion over 3 years sustainably, reducing poverty and hunger through agricultural development and food security. This is from Environmental Protection Law and Policy text and material by Jane Holder, Holder, and Maria Lee at Cambridge University Press in 1994. Continue. In Chicago, we got a foretaste of a new breed of foundation hatched Black communitarian voices. One of them, a smooth Harvard lawyer with impeccable do-good credentials and various to repressive liberal policies. The Curse of Community. This was based upon Village Voices. This was January 16, 1996. The 2010 was a banner year for stretching communitarian bureaucratic red tape across the game board. Food joined in the topic roster as a big-time player. Watch for it to tie into many more emergency community safety and or economic issues. The war on obesity is on. The partnership with the government are a major catalyst for communitarian changes. As of 2010 ACE, a team up with the Alaska Department of Health and Social Services, Obesity Prevention and Control Program, the U.S. Department of wait. We have inferior food right now. People are overweight, and yet they who can't even afford this food. You see, this is what they're doing. They're blaming you for everything when they have created these GMO foods in the first place, folks, that cause harm to you, that maybe someone couldn't afford it. You see what they do? They turn it back around. There's no justice here, folks. There won't be any. So the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the USDA, these are people who are change agents in government already, folks. The Farm Bureau, the Alaska Division of Agriculture, and AK Roof Sellers to form the first Alaska Food Policy Council. The long-term goals of the Food Policy Council will be to identify barriers to building a viable Alaskan food system, create a strategic plan to address these barriers, and make the necessary recommendations to decision makers to implement this plan. Diverse stakeholders from around the state have been invited to participate, including representatives from commercial farms, farmers market, and the CSA, fisherers and fish processors, distributors, institutional persons, private sector businesses, legislators, consumers, Alaska Naval Tribal Organizations, Food Security Organization, Environmental Organization, and also the local, state, and federal government agencies. People learn very quickly that there are only two sides to an important argument. You either believe in climate change or you don't. Independent thinkers like us who refuse to buy into one of the other sides, we're called retards by brainwashed believers on both sides. Yes. Communitarian historical revisionists distorts the principle for U.S. law guaranteeing our liberty. Our guru, Mr. Itali, was raised on a kibbutz in the British Mandate for Palestine. He immigrated to the U.S. after he fought as a terrorist, hear me, as a terrorist and special force revolutionary soldier. A student of Kabbalah, Etzonius, I'll spell it again for you, E-T-Z-I-N-I, Zania, is very skilled at the art of deception. He's a fried-out liar, folks. Some historians, this is a quote, some historians have depleted the United States as a society centered around Lockean values. That's, what's his name? Locke, Britain. Those are rights and liberty. Actually, it's now widely agreed that the United States had from its inception both a strong communitarian and individual strain, a synthesis of Republican virtues and liberal voice. That is an enormously lie there, you see. It was never a community. See, they wrap these words using like community and individual strand, you see, and then saying it's a Republican virtues. You see what he's doing here? Slick guy. Many of our children were successfully taught to think trees, bugs, and animals had rights equal to human beings. All public school children must celebrate communitarian holidays like Earth Day and Martin Luther Jr. Day. As whistleblower author, that is Charlotte Isby, informed us in no uncertain terms, students are being deliberately dumbed down, of course they are, and trained to perform like puppets in voluntary communitarian services programs. The basic truth of communitarians are allowed to simply permeate our lives unconsciously as views that are so obvious and so important that no reasonable person could possibly disagree with them, just as we breathe the air that surrounds us. That's the Communitarian Resident Life Movement by Thomas Wood, National Associate of Scholars in 2008. In my personal experience, messed up here. In my personal experience, communitarians are usually low-key and frightfully calm. Their quiet reserve is always better looking when compared to freaked out locals who are angry, upset, and having trouble explaining exactly why. People get frustrated differently. Some really care how they look to the group. I don't, and I realize my communitarian neighbors thought they could discount my objections by ignoring my raised hand. I changed my strategy and did a whole lot of interrupting. Anyone familiar with my early work knows how much I calmed down since we first started. My writing style always seemed too angry. I was furious at being tricked and treated like a fool. So it was a great honor to be included in Thomas Wood's research. The bottom line I learned from him is resident hall monitors in Delaware aren't any more forthcoming about naming their ideology than community development bureaucrats were in Seattle. What's happening, folks, is simply people have jumped on board, got these cushy jobs, and frankly, they don't even know what they're doing. They, in some ways, are taught that they must deal with those who take, or what we call middle class, or have an education. So they must take from them, destroy them. You see. Continue. We present this as an observation of the remarkable overlap of communitarian principles and principles motivating sustainability. That word is said all over the place now, sustainability. Always sustainability. That's that buzzword, folks. The sustainability means that nothing, once it's there, is it going to sustain you? Is that what they talk about, growing food? You know, we're going to have a sustainable economy. Well, what that means simply, there won't be any jobs. You see, and the government will be taking care of you as long as you say the right thing. You see, that's part of what we call, you know, the destruction of the dollar is taking place right in the face right now. It's been happening for the last 3 years. And so what they're going to do is destroy it. And they're going to use what they call a digital dollar. But it's going to be based upon that you no longer disagree with anything in order for you to be, you've got to be a good little boy over here in order to simply get your food. You see? That's dictatorship to the max, folks. Okay, let me continue here. We present this as observation of the remarkable overlap of communitarian principles and the principles motivating sustainability and the residence life movement. Communitarianism is a notorious elusive political concept. For example, what is the communitarian stance on abortion, on the death penalty, the minimum wage, healthcare reform? Depending on communitarian you are speaking to, the answer will run the gamut of the political spectrum, you see. Anyway, that's going to be, we're going to go into this whole thing. I'm going to share one other thing here that stands out to me. Clinton's political rhetoric is sufficient with his communitarian perspective. During his presidential campaign, Clinton introduced the slogan of the New Covenant, which harkened back to the religious roots of our family and communal obligations and introduced a spiritual dimension to his new policies or new politics. A few months into the new administration, Hillary Rodham Clinton incorporated the language of TIKKUN editors Michael Lernon, calling for a new politics of meaning. What is that all about? You see, all these creative words pointing to a crisis of values ultimately occasioned by the market. She pronounced in a speech at the University of Texas that the market knows the price of everything and the value of nothing. That is language which began to move from pragmatic towards a more radical and prophetic communitarianism. Recently, Clinton has embraced a new language of security, far less visionary than the politics of meaning, but effective in touching the raw anxieties of the public. There's another quote here. Let's see what's the quote from. It's barely something here else also. So the United States seeks a safer, more prosperous, more democratic, and more equitable world. Equitable is simply that you basically your neighbors no longer haves and nots. You're all going to be the same thing. You see, you're all going to be equally poor and hungry. That's what it's about. We cannot reach that goal when 1/3 of the humankind lives in conditions that offers them little chance of building better lives. They prey on you with this all. I feel sorry for you. This is all going back to the what's the group called? Fabians. This is a Fabian tragedy, folks. We feel sorry for these people, you see. And so the Fabians who are well off money-wise, who actually could have helped these people who are poor, choose not to do that. Instead, they choose to make the government to do it, and you, the taxpayer, have to pay for it. That's what it's about. We'll tell you how to do things and tell you what you should do. We'll take your money, but basically, we're not going to do anything about it. This is what these people are. These people are super maniacs. This is the Fabians. This is H.G. Wells, Huxley, and others. Bertrand Russell. These were well-educated people who decided to act as though they're benevolent and they care about you so much, but in reality, what they did was simply they never offered, they never gave a penny to help the people. All they did was simply focus and make government to be responsible for it, and then you, the taxpayer, would have to pay that fee. That's what these people are. These are hypocrites, people. These are hypocrites for sure. They talk one way out of their mouth, and their actions are completely opposite. As recognized in the U.S. national security strategy, we believe that development is a moral, strategic, and economic imperative. The successful pursuit of development is essential to advancing our national security objectives. Security here, the word prosperity, these words they use. But they all are buzzwords, folks. They sound really nice in some ways. Some of them are actually kind of, like security is kind of like, oh, we're going to protect you, you see. Respect for universal values. What does universal values have to do here? What is a universal value? See, these are all nice words, but they don't really have any cognitive meaning to them. Because you might think, oh, this is what it means, but someone else might think something else. And a just and sustainable international order. Again, that's the buzzwords, a just and sustainable. That word sustainable, always sustainable. Well, that means simply is a meager living, folks. International order means simply that there's no longer going to be the nation state. Remember that the nation state itself is not that old. But they're the ones that created these wars too, that fight against each other. You see, these are all their whole way they work, folks. These are bad people. Countries that achieve sustainable development gains can be more capable partners, participate in and contribute to the global economy. Well, that means simply is when they do so well, they'll take their money and give it to the others, to the have-nots. That's what it means. But they don't do it themselves. You see, they're 95 to 96% of they own 95 to 96%, and they're trying to take the rest of it from you. So they participate in contributing to the global economy and provide the people with the opportunity, means, and freedom to improve their lives. Therefore, we are elevating development as a key pillar of our foreign policy and making it central to our engagement with the world. What a load of crock, folks. That is the end of chapter 1. I'm going to take a break. I appreciate you being here. It's been an hour and 20 minutes. Wow. But Niki Raapana did this work along with her daughter, the Anti-Communitarian Manifesto. This is a key work for us to understand. There's another gentleman who actually talks about this is Tom DeLuise, who deals with what I call the Agenda 21 himself. But Niki Raapana has connected it all of together. I'm not saying that Tom DeLuise's work is not good. I'm just saying something. He's probably looking at the American situation. He's not connected all together with other countries, so to be, of this world dynamic of, a community. So I'm going to take a break here, eat a little bit of lunch, and I'll hopefully get back to you with chapter 2 today. Thank you for being here. And again, if you have any questions, and you're welcome to share this video to others, because very few of this book is, yes, it's sold, but there are very few people. This was, this is 20. Let's see, she wrote it in 2010. It's actually over, 13 years old, 13 years, and she just passed away last year. So it's important for you to actually try to share this information. I'm reading the book so that it can be passed on, because I don't think people are going to be able to get the book unless they have it emailed to them, you see. So anyway, I thought I'd share this with you, and have a good day, and we'll be back with you shortly. Thank you. Have a good day.